Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out. The topic says we are trying to bridge the divide between rural and urban. I'll start with the fact that currently, what is the divide, at what state it is, and how much have we been able to bridge, whether it's through digital connection, is through your mobile classes, or is through anything. Have we reached some point where we have reached that 1% point where we've been able to bridge some divide?
I think we living in cities tend to overestimate the impact of digital. When COVID happened, Delhi, more than half the children were not attending a class because there was only one mobile at home. Government schools, right? And that mobile would go back with the man who was earning the income. So there is no class that was happening. And WhatsApp to bhul jayega, they used to communicate through SMSs because they don't have internet connectivity, right? So this entire thing of thinking that digital is going to solve all the problems is ridiculous. Two, I think as a country, we have possibly demonetized education for many other things. You look at the last 10 years data, the number of schools have fallen. The population increased 14%, the number of schools fell 8%, the enrollment fell 2%. That's not how you bridge divide. You bridge divide by ensuring that education is accessible and affordable. The private schools increased 100%. The public schools fell 8%, sorry, right? The colleges, the private universities went up by 300%. The public universities went up by 40%. The private colleges went up by about 100%. The public colleges fell down by 2%. So the data is up there that I think at some level we think that education is not the government's responsibility. We should not be subsidizing education. It's ridiculous things that keep happening. And then we talk of demographic dividend. You don't earn a dividend unless you invest money in it. And we stopped investing money. And we expect a dividend because we are the most populous nation. So bridging the divide is far away. I think we are slightly taking a few steps back in terms of education. And that, for me, remains a story that we need to be talking for the next 2-3 decades to deal with it.
Sure. So, I completely agree with what he had mentioned, especially during the COVID times. और especially अगर आप लड़की हो घर में और दो और लड़के हैं तो पापा एक स्मार्टफोन होगा तो खाली वो लड़कों को देंगे, भले लड़की के 95% आ रहे हैं और लड़के के 60% आए हैं, but they'll still give the phone to the guy. And a lot of times these girls were saying, sir, we are missing the classes because at the same time we have multiple things. तो रोज सुबह घर में महाभारत होती थी. So definitely either city ho या गांव हो, I think providing those gadgets is very important. And of course, ensuring the right parental controls are there in the gadget so it is used for the education purpose is also very important. During COVID times, we gave away almost 40,000 tablets. And primarily, we were focused on giving it to the girl child. And we definitely saw that क्योंकि लड़की को दे रहे थे, even her dignity in the family psychologically improved as well. While we keep talking about bridging the digital divide, I also think that there is a lot of good things which are happening. With all the startups, and I think one of the award category here was also for skilling in startups. Right? With all these startups which are coming out, every other day I keep hearing of some great edtech which has come forward, which is doing good work as well, and which has penetrated in the rural parts of the country as well, with geo and a lot of other things. So I think, of course, it can be scaled up even further. The investment can be scaled up even further. But definitely, the Digital India movement is, I feel, catching on, especially in the startup space. As far as our NGO is concerned, we've now put up about 6,000 smart classrooms, and 60% of them are in rural India. And we have found their ability to adapt to technology for the children and the teachers is a lot faster than what we think. And there's been a 4 times improvement in maths and science as per London School of Economics' impact study of the work, and a 15% improvement in attendance. So I think today's generation is ready for tech, and I think I think the country and everyone should do a lot more investment in it to bridge this divide even further. Thanks.
I'll take the question forward from what he said about skilling. You know, skilling, even NEP says that from grade 12 you can introduce skilling in schools or skilling in college. Skilling has now become part of the education system, right? It also drives the gig economy to a certain extent. But क्या एक्चुअल में स्किलिंग हो रहा है, और अगर हो रहा है तो कौन से स्पेसिफिक एरियाज में वी आर सीइंग दीज स्किलिंग्स हैपनिंग, यू नो, especially in rural India where literacy is also a problem. I'm not talking about education per se, where writing your name or reading a particular language, say a Hindi or whatever it is a challenge in majority of people.
So, a really good question. See, I'll just pivot to something else, then I'll come back to your question. So, see, the question is, when you talk about the rural and urban divide, so what are the key things which are there, you know? So, first is about access. Second is about basically, you know, what are the facilities which are available. And then future ready, which is what you were talking about. So, if you talk about access, you know, school kitni dur hai? Is it safe for girls to go? Transportation hai ki nahi hai? Rural mein. Dusra is about basically, you know, the facilities, ki labs hain, sanitation hai. So, teachers available. In rural में teachers अच्छे मिलने भी बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. And then the last is about this future ready, which is what you spoke about. See, in rural, when you're educating them to what ends? There are no jobs over there. So what are you educating them for? You're educating them so that they have a good livelihood, they're independent, they're economically empowered. But वो jobs ही नहीं है तो आप क्या करिए? So I think, you know, gig economy, some of the stuff which technology which is happening, is I think a great segue, or it actually helps us solve some of these problems. I think it's still very, very early. So for us at Magic Bus, what we do is we do large scale skilling, but we are mostly in urban, peri-urban places. So वहाँ तो jobs हैं, और rural के लिए हमारे पास कोई solution नहीं है अभी फिलहाल. तो हम एक entrepreneurship development कर रहे हैं उधर. We are also looking at basically, you know, doing MSMEs. Then I was speaking to Ratna and I was telling her, can we do some microfinance kind of stuff, you know? So I think there are different solutions which have to come out, but technology just makes it easier for us to kind of, you know, get there. And
microfinance or finance, I think, is one of the biggest bottleneck. I think affordability of education is something also which, at least in rural, hasn't been tackled well so far. और अगर आप student loan भी लेते हो, उसका rate of interest is so high, I don't know, half of your life goes into paying or repaying that. So it's all commercialized.
So see, basically, yeah. So Anushri, there are 2-3 things operating here. When we talk of stark rural and urban, they don't really exist because the urban poor is as disenfranchised as people in rural India. That's one. 2, in terms of access. Now, you also have this. There are certain states which are far more urban. Your entire northeastern part of the country, electricity is an issue. In Arunachal, you have 44% electricity. In a place like Meghalaya, you have 16% electricity. Digital, no digital isn't even a conversation, right? And most of this electricity is around urban parts of these states. So I think when you look at this question, it has several nuances. So urban poor and rural, there isn't much difference in access to education. A. B, with this whole, you know, rash of the so-called budget English medium schools, they're milking poor people who can ill afford it, and they're unregulated, and they're not even giving you quality. So there's an issue there. Skilling and, taking children over to work. I work with government schools entirely, right? Government schools, almost 60 to 62% of children do a transition from school to work directly. It's very few that go beyond the 8th grade to actually start working. So the government syllabus does have a smattering of what skilling should be from the 6th grade onwards, but that's what it is. There's no financial literacy element to it. There is no real employability element to it. And also I think where we fall apart is this whole cookie cutter approach to syllabus and skilling, because what ends up happening is what works in a northeastern state will not work in the western state of India. You have to look at local economies, local availability of work, and I think skilling needs to be aligned and focused with that. Thank you.
Just to add, first of all, I work in the higher education domain, so I'm going to go there a little bit. Our education system is pyramidic, right? So you have isolated peaks of excellence at the top, right? And a very, very broad base, which is largely peri-urban, tier 2, tier 3 colleges, right? That's where the bulk of the students are, right? And if you, as the panelists said, that there is problems with access, there's problems with equity, resources, and there's a general lack. If you see, there's a vast gulf that exists, not in terms of their abilities, right? The difference is in opportunities, right? The tier 1 colleges, because of their reputation for excellence, right, gets all the funding, all the resources, the best teachers and the best students go there, right? And then the cycle perpetuates itself, right? I was just talking earlier and I said, the teachers at small colleges are some of the most overworked, underpaid, and demotivated lot, right? Because nobody appreciates them for the work they do, right? The other thing is that not everything can be done digitally, right? I think there is no replacement for the physical presence of a teacher in a student's life. What you learn and how you learn it, and the actual practical aspect of how you are learning, what you're learning, plays a huge role. And the distance in the distance learning thing actually has a limitation. So we also need to talk about what can be done through digital learning and what cannot be done, right? It's not a replacement for actual access, actual quality education available to students in schools, in colleges, right?
In fact, I'll just add to both. I think both very good points, right? So one is about, you said the access, so physical, you can't replace physical with digital, right? It's just a substitute of, agar wo nahi ho sakta hai, to phir theek hai, this is something is better than nothing. The other stuff which you mentioned about technology, Ratna, was about, on the tablets, etc. Yeah, you're right, there's no power over there. So we tried giving tablets, you couldn't charge them. And then, you give one tablet per person, or, you have 3 students and sharing a tablet. So how do you charge it? And that was a huge logistics nightmare to charge them, put them back in operation again, and then, they break, then how do you maintain them in the rural areas? So that's, yeah.
I think there's just one small point. There's another downside to this whole digital space. For instance, in Haryana, 1 lakh tablets were distributed. There were no parental controls, there was no strategy, there was no thinking around it. Most of the kids are accessing porn on these tablets, and nobody can do anything about it because it wasn't thought through. It wasn't, given with what it's going to lead to, parental control, sensitization of parents around this whole space. So everything has an upside and a downside to it, and I think they need to be calibrated when we approach them.
So when we give the tablets, we'd actually whitelisted what they can actually, so that possibility is that you would.
Yeah.
So election season, more tablets, more ways of winning votes. But another question is, when you try to bridge that gap, I think somewhere we forget upskilling of teachers and filling the gap of teachers. Student is secondary, but primary, I think there is also a huge shortage of teachers. How do you see that working? Because again, private institutes have the ability to pay and get the best, but there is no inclination to join government schools, sir, unless you are a housewife or you intend to divide your time between household work and, your career.
No, I think there is no shortage of people wanting to be teachers. If you look at all the competitive exams across the country in states for government schools and all, there are 200 seekers for one job for teachers. So there is no shortage of that. It's about how you go about recruiting them is where the problem is, because there's a lot of corruption that seeps in. There is a lot of nepotism that seeps in, and all, and that creates a problem. Otherwise, I don't think India, for any job, and not just teachers, for any job, there is a need for us to look at whether there are enough seekers for that kind of a job, and teachers is no exception. In fact, teachers is the most sought after thing. In some of these examinations, you have 50, 60 lakhs people writing an examination to be a teacher. So I don't see that as a problem at all. And two, this public-private thing is a bit overstretched. Like the private teacher earns as much as a public government teacher versus, or vice versa. You look at the higher education we talk of, there is a scale that is created by UGC and everyone follows that. And the private guys are reluctant to follow that because it's very high. The government teachers still get it. Private universities actually give it and take it back. There is a lot of corruption that seeks in and those kind of things. And the same thing happens in the schooling system also, that the government creates a scale for teachers. The thing is, when you have contractual teachers, which is where the problem comes in, because the governments can't afford that. But to say that there is lack of number of people who want to be teachers is wrong.
So I would just quickly want to refer to something that they had mentioned, because children can be misusing these gadgets as well in rural parts of the country or urban parts of the country. So we have got this device management system in there. So we know exactly how many hours have they spent on a specific maths lesson or a science lesson, and how many hours have they gone on internet looking at specific sites on YouTube. So I think putting in those strategies and thinking those out is important. Also, the dangers of technology is something, we see so many people all over the place on reels all day long. It's not just happening in schools, but also in the workplaces, right? Maybe in your office as well sometimes. And it's led to anxiety, stress, sleepless nights. I've really seen that, there's 5 people on a dinner table, all 5 are on the phone. And they're not even eating properly, and the harmful effects of I've seen people sleeping with the cell phone under their pillow. जैसे कि वो हमारी धरोहर है, or a gadget under their pillow. And I know, that's why I'm sharing. हमारे घर में भी होता है कभी-कभी. So that can lead to severe emotional and mental damage as well. So I think it's important to teach them that fine balance as well. And from a teacher's efficiency perspective, I think it's very important to think of sustainability in everything we're doing. People just think that toilets बना रहे हो ना, उसमें sustainability होनी चाहिए. But from a philanthropy point of view, they don't realize that some of the things that Jayant brought up, कि भाई वहाँ पे electricity है कि नहीं, gadgets को कैसे charge करेंगे. So in the smart classrooms that we put in, we provide a Google certified trainer for 1 year. Before the end of the year, he will train 5 other teachers to be Google certified in that school, and then he will exit and go to another school. So it's important to think of sustainability in all parts of the impact we are trying to create.
मैं इनकी रील की बात में I just want to, so this is actually it's quite profound, so we do skilling at a very large scale. So when I go to my skilling centers, and these are all youth, who want to get into jobs, they've dropped off school. So I ask them कि कितने लोग Facebook पे हैं. So there are very few hands which go up. When you ask them Insta, almost all the hands go up, so which is very surprising. People of our generation, we are on Facebook, we were not on Insta. Now I'm on Insta because we deal with these people. And so I think everybody's, and that's a great way to connect also,
No, so there are 2 sides to it from where I see. YouTube becoming a teacher or teachers being on YouTube. I have also seen parents, going on to YouTube for, crunching homeworks or subscribing or paying to a certain this thing to let the kid understand, to enroll into these things. But does that actually help? Because our smart classroom में एक issue, which I could be wrong again, is the issue of अगर आप TV screen install करते हैं, it can, if it's in the interiors, tomorrow anybody can vandalize it, right? So how do you tackle those problems also?
So see, what we did during COVID, so we realized that there was huge learning loss. People were stepping 2 classes and they didn't even have grade level kind of, जो उनका level था, जो 6th में जा रहे थे, उनका बच्चों का 3rd का भी level नहीं था. और जो 6th से जो सीधे 8th में जा रहे थे, कुछ 2 साल तो सब स्कूल बंद थे. तो क्या करिए आप? तो what we did, we actually opened community learning centers. तो वहाँ पे हमने smart TV, internet connection, जैसे ये बता रहे हैं कुछ जो चार्जिंग वार्जिंग बैकअप उस तरीके का करिए, सो दैट प्रोवाइडिंग देम एन एनवायरनमेंट विच इज़ लाइक आवर हाउसेज विद चिल्ड्रन विद अ एकेडमिक एजुकेटर, सो दैट रियली स्प्रेड. सो but Kyagi, these are all expensive solutions. You know, how many places can you take it? So we opened 350 odd such centers, you know, across different nooks and corners of the country. But the need is really, really huge.
I'll actually go back to your original question about teachers. I don't think it's the paucity of teachers that's the issue. Especially in government teachers, there are two things that are at play. A, they are recruited as permanent government servants. So whether they teach or they don't teach, they get paid, they get promoted, they get transferred. They don't go and have proxy teachers in their places. And because the system has kind of forgotten them, they are not consulted for anything. Curriculum is drawn up somewhere else. Syllabus is drawn up somewhere else. Even things like lesson plans, they don't have the autonomy, that's created somewhere else. So then what is the effect that I am a teacher, but I have zero agency? Why on earth would I be interested in teaching? So I think what is critical is giving that agency back to teachers. Just saying they're not interested is easy. There is a reason they're not interested. So then to include them as a part of the whole process, make sure they are going to teach, not you who's drawing up the curriculum. Why will they not be consulted? And the moment you start consulting, you will find that a lot of the so-called perceived apathy falls off, right? Number one. Number two, and this is something we're doing a lot, we've introduced a great deal of elements of play in terms of experiential and activity-based elements as part of regular lessons. It's not beyond classrooms. It's not after school that there is extra work for the teachers. It's part of regular business as usual. The dividend that we're seeing that's coming off this is now that since teachers also have something to touch, feel, hear, do, they're happy, they're excited. So it's not an expensive solution. There are no smart classrooms. We work with government schools. We work with whatever is locally available. Local flora, local fauna, local heroes, local stories. They're hyper-local actually. But everybody's enthusiastic. Kids are happy because somebody's not reading out to them. Teachers are happy because they have things to do. So involving the teacher, who is the critical agent of delivery of education in the entire system, is something we are missing out. And saying, oh, we have to teach, train teachers for 50 hours in the, train on what? You don't do blue sky training. It has to be focused and it has to be very pertinent to what is being done locally. So saying that teachers are not interested and teachers are available, like he said, teachers are very much available. It's how you use them, engage them and get them into, you can have smart classrooms. It doesn't make a difference. The child is as bored. If the teacher is not engaging, the TV is just some fun thing for the child to stare at, not learning, right? So unless there is, and we keep talking about socio-emotional, why do we need classrooms? Socialization as part of learning is key and critical. That is why they have to be brick and mortar classrooms. Digital can never be an alternative. You grow as a human being, your personality, your emotions, everything, between the ages of 3 to 11. They're the most critical years of learning for a child. Now, if you obviate all of this, you will have people who are going to sit on reels all day and stare at the ceiling and not talk to each other.
This is a subject that's very close to my heart, so I'm going to jump in. See, part of the problem is that a lot of our knowledge that we impart, what we students learn, whether at schools or college, is very theoretical, right? It has literally very little practical relevance. Cultural context, तो आप छोड़ ही दीजिए. So, like you said, Z for zebra. But never mind that, nobody's seen one and couldn't care less about what a zebra looks like. When you do things with experiential learning, it is well known that the learning is far more deep-seated, right? It doesn't cost a lot, right? But yet, very small components actually of an actual curriculum is still experiential, whether at school level or college level. You're absolutely right that when there are experiential components in the curriculum, that's what makes the knowledge practical and relevant, right? If you learn math and don't know how that math theory actually applies to a real life, right? You're never going to impart that skilling aspect to knowing what math brings to the table, right? That's one. The other thing is, I was in a college, very remote college in Kerala, in the middle of a reserve forest recently, right? The teachers were using an Arduino board for the first time in their life, right? A lot of them were in their 40s and 50s, and they were having a ball, right? Most kids in an urban context learn robotics and Arduino these days in their 8th and 9th standard, because we have hyper-achieving parents who want their kids to know everything, right? But these are people who've been teaching so-called engineering domains, electrical engineers who've never worked with an Arduino board. How are they going to teach their kids anything, right? But you train one of them, they will train the others around them because they were having fun. They were like, okay, teach me how to do this, right? I will teach my students. Okay, I will call 5 other people. That's when they get engaged, right? So that's, like you said, that's a very important part of actually making them feel relevant and then getting them excited about the job of teaching.
I just want to quickly answer the question you had asked about safety of the assets. So we did face a lot of issues in terms of theft and vandalism and stuff. So we put in a Google charger bank there. So all the Chromebooks go inside, it's locked. So all the 20 Chromebooks at the end of the day will be inside that charger bank, and it'll be locked. And even the smart classroom ka kamra, the principal will lock and keep the key with him. But it goes beyond just the technology. So a lot of places where we are providing dishwashing, drinking, hand washing areas, वो नलके तोड़ के ले जाते थे क्योंकि घर में नलका लगाना है. तो हमने नलकों पे भी kind of a lock and key जैसा मॉडल बना दिया, जाली बना दी है, so that only the teacher or the principal can open it up and go. क्योंकि in some of the aspirational districts or remote parts, they're like, 2-3 नलके हमारे घर पे लग जाएंगे. So I think in everything we do, safety of the assets has to be a key piece as well.
I have one question. When you spoke about dividend, of course that's a big area because everybody is aiming for it, everybody wants it. Secondly, now that India falls under the SDG category where they have to follow the 17 goals and diversity and inclusivity is a big part of it, I don't think so we have even started reaching a point. How do you see we even meet that goal by 2030?
Spending more money. I think we need to prioritize investing in our people more than statues. We need to prioritize ensuring that each of this young population of ours is more productive. See, most populous country doesn't make you the most prosperous country. The most populous country which is productive in its approach would make you the most prosperous country. So we need to start investing, like we talked of earlier, the divide, we talked of digital divide or whatever divide we talked of. The divide is essentially, you go back to the earlier days of 60s when midday meal scheme happened. Midday meal scheme was one way of ensuring that parents and laborers send their children over to the school so that they can actually be fed properly. And then it created a structure where children were coming in and they were being taught and they became productive because of that. Many of the schemes that we have around us today are essentially to draw the parents or compel the parents to send their children out. Otherwise, the children were going along with the parents and sitting in the quarries while the parents were working in the quarries. And that's how it used to happen. Many of the schemes that we have is meant for a country like India. It is today to question those schemes and say we're wasting money like someone. One of the best schemes that we had to produce scientists was KVPY, Kishore Vidyan, and that was scrapped. Why? Because so much money was going out to 300 people. Damn it, those 300 people are going to fly your satellite. And they're going to claim about how, India has, reached Mars and Moon and whatnot. See, you need to understand that investing in education is never a waste of money. It's never a waste of money. For you to keep talking, like today, IIM fees is 30 lakh rupees, bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It was 2 lakh rupees 15 years back. What made you increase your salary, fee by 15 times, and what have you achieved by increasing it 15 times? They're making profits. You go through IIM annual reports, you will actually have 100 crores of reserves every year being added. And the tuition fee is 100 crore rupees. Now, why do you increase? Because you say you get over sleep and say, oh, 7% inflation हमको increase करना ही है. आपको ज़रूरत है क्या? पूछते नहीं आप. बस increase करना है, कुछ करना है आपको. And what do they do with the money? They put it in a fixed deposit for 6%, whereas the student is borrowing at 14% to pay that 6%. It's ridiculous. You know, we've got a maths wrong as far as investing in our people is concerned. We don't trust our own people. Like, let's put it slightly differently. Each of us as parents or siblings or whatever it is, we invest 15 to 20% of our income into our children's education. The moment I become a policy maker, I invest 3%. Because they are other people's children, not my children.
Yeah, so true.
And that is a challenge. If I can invest 15-20% of my income in my family to ensure that my child is better off, then why is it that when I become a government servant or a policy maker or a minister, invest 3.5-4%? That is where the divide is.
I'll just add last question to this and then you guys are free to open. India also is home to the largest, youngest population, and the fear is there's going to be a high unemployability currently from what we can see.
They'll all be Salman Khan fans.
So clearly things are not working in the education space, with EdTech looking at more of it from a scheme of business. Like Sir said, less money being invested in it. So if we are serious in the next 1, 2, 3 years, what is that one should do to ensure we see employability, I mean, which can be based on skill or education, either ways?
First of all, you know, just on the demographic dividend part, we don't have a dividend, we have an opportunity. And I see that opportunity being frittered away. Particularly, like Sir said, because we don't invest in education, right? So the opportunity right now, we have a finite window. If we don't invest in education now, that opportunity is really going to be frittered away. That's point number one. Point number two is, if you want employability, make the education more relevant, right? Where are the jobs, right? Does your education cater to the kind of skills required where the jobs will be in the future, right? If the future is in technology, right? I work in the STEM education domain, right? 35% of our graduating engineers do not know how to write a single line of code. We produce engineering services to the world, but the point is less than 5% of our engineers can do any kind of design or production or engineering design work, right? We know India will need 20 billion engineers in the deep tech domain. Do we have 20 million people who can do that kind of work? No. So yes, there is going to be a massive skill gap, right? And unless and until we make what we are teaching more relevant, we will have a problem in our hands.
So I just quickly want to share that, as he said, investing in education is not optional. It is the best gift you can give to someone. It is absolutely paramount. So even for my wedding, all of you guys will be happy to know, yesterday we had a 10-year wedding anniversary with my wife who's here. So I said that yaar court marriage kar lenge, 10 saal pehle. I'm a Gujju married to a Jat, and that time it was a taboo. But all over the country there are hoardings called Har Har Modi, Ghar Ghar Modi. So whenever they ask ladka kaha, to bolo iske gaon ka hai, to theek hoga. Now basically what happened was, I said let's do a court marriage and let's give scholarships to 100 girls to help them become doctors, lawyers, engineers, chartered accountants. And now I'm happy to share that that scholarship fund has scaled up more than 100 crores just from friends, family, corporates. And now we have helped thousands and thousands of girls who are working at Goldman Sachs, IBM, Google, Microsoft. They become scientists, they're cardiologists, gynecologists. One such girl, which I would love to share you about, is Vaishnavi Panchal. वो बड़ौदा की बेटी थी और उसके पिताजी हीरे घिसते थे. Because of malnourishment, उसका right hand stopped working. So she said that मेरे सामने दो option थे. या तो मैं left hand से practice करूँ ABCD and pick up speed in writing with my left hand, और मैं कहीं पे काम वाली बाई बन जाऊँ for the rest of my life. And there'll be a different route for my entire generation. Friends, not only she got in 12th board exam, she topped Baroda, she topped the entire state of Gujarat. And she's now become a CA, and she was ranked in the top 20 across the country, and now she's working at Axis Mutual Funds in Bombay. Just recently, a month ago, she's got a job there. And now she said she wants to help 10 other girls. So the gift of education, investing in education has to happen at the government level, at our level. It needs to be a part of the fabric. कि यार आज wedding anniversary 5 लड़कियों को scholarship दे दे, मुझे gift नहीं देगा तो चलेगा. Birthday है 10 लड़कियों को scholarship दे दे, मुझे gift नहीं देगा तो चलेगा. No matter what happens, I think this is the most sustainable present we can give to someone forever. And last piece is the diversity and thank you. And the last piece is diversity and inclusion that you mentioned. Not a lot of people here know that the government has made resource centers. Just by show of hands, I'm curious, has anyone heard of the government resource centers for special children?
Yes.
Okay. So few of them, right? And in the government schools, they'll give 2 rooms. और वहाँ पे there's 27 different types of disabilities. Cerebral palsy है, visually impaired है, hearing impaired है. वो बच्चे neighboring के less privileged जो है, वो लोग वहाँ पे जाएंगे. In Gujarat, there's 500 resource centers, and we've put in 10 tablets in each of those 500 resource tablet centers recently with Bank of America support. And what we found is, तो जो visually impaired थे, उनके लिए हमने read along apps डाल दिए. जो hearing impaired थे, उनके लिए visual apps डाले हैं. Different apps based on the disabilities they have. Government ने खुद ये applications बनाए हैं. और कई बच्चे जो visually impaired थे, जो 10th में 1-2 साल से fail हो रहे थे, उनके 70% आए, 60% आए. तो diversity and inclusion means digital literacy for people of all kinds. So I think that's very important. I'm seeing more and more technology coming in for special children as well. So thank you for asking that.
So frankly, the demographic dividend is a numbers game, right? And it is a game of scale, right? Now today, if you look at it, almost 60 to 65% children in India go to government schools. 15% go to the upper caste, very privileged schools. The rest of them are in that mess called the private budget school, which is taking them nowhere. They're walking down a blind alley. Now, when you talk about a demographic dividend, there's a need to focus on at least the 62% that exist, because they are within the framework of where you have them in catchment areas, right? The moment you have them there, there is a need, and we keep talking about demographic dividend. Vocational education starts in government syllabus from class 6 onwards. They are lessons. They don't really mean much, right? At the end of the day, what do we want to create? Do we want to create job seekers with the kind of unemployment we have? Or do we want to create job creators? Now, to create entrepreneurs, unless you have elements of financial literacy, how to use financial instruments, and the kind of skilling that is most relevant to the geography that you are located in. I can give you an example. We worked with Microsoft when I was in another organization to train a bunch of children from Chhattisgarh in hospitality and send them off to Bombay. 6 mahine mein, 85% of them came back. They were miserable, they were alone, they were in a geography that was alien to them, they had no friends, they had to send money back to support their families. They were miserable. They came back, and that taught us a very important lesson. Local hospitality, whether it's retail, small establishments, shops, etc. Those people, you train them in local hospitality, they may not get what they were getting in Bombay, but they will get more than enough to sustain them, be emotionally stable, support their families. So I think these are the things, the hacks that we need to look at when we're making policy. And making policy with English words is never going to help anybody.
I think they've really closed this really well. So I really don't have too much to add. But see, I just want to kind of close at the optimistic. See, there's a lot of, I think, there are a lot of challenges, but there are those many more solutions also which are there. One is technology. I think, community, involving the community is the other thing. Infrastructures. So I think the government is doing quite a bit. In fact, I was surprised, I went to a rural place in Odisha, which is supposed to be, which is supposed to have the highest dropout rate for girls, almost 30% at the higher secondary level. And their schools had these, smart screens which were there. I don't have those in my offices also. And these kids were coming and they were actually writing on those electronic boards. They were actually, explaining YouTube, रोक के बाकी बच्चों को सिखा रहे थे. So I think there's a lot of good positive work also which is actually happening alongside, everything. And I think technology is also kind of going to bridge that gap, Yes, there are challenges, but now with, internet being available in rural areas, so I think there are solutions, and the way the technology is advancing, I think there will be more and more solutions. So I just want to leave that on with that hope.